Good morning to everyone. I hope you're all well and that your businesses are thriving. I'm Don Schultz, and I'm a business analyst and advisor specifically to the wood products manufacturing industry. I've held positions everywhere from the bench to the boardroom, trained as a journeyman cabinet maker. Most recently, led a $20 million greenfield plant project for a $4 billion construction startup. So today's discussion, I want to talk about productivity, but in a slightly different context. Generally, we think of productivity as the domain of the plant and its manufacturing processes. Yet productivity is really defined as the effectiveness of the productive effort as measured in terms of the rate of output per the rate of input. So productive effort then is not limited to the plant floor, but every one of our business processes has a rate of output per unit of input. So the context I want to use today for productivity is to talk in terms of our revenue generation. In other words, revenue productivity as measured against human resources deployed company-wide, the inputs required to generate revenues as measured by invoices for our shipments, the outputs. We want to consider how technology and specifically information can improve the efficiency with which we generate revenues. In other words, I want to talk about how we grow our top line and how information technologies can help drive that improvement. So Robert Solow, the renowned American economist, once said, most of the increases in human living standards have come not from working more hours and not from using more capital or other resources, but from improved productivity. That is the increases in efficiency of production as defined by the rate of output per unit of input. Solow's theory on exogenous growth holds that growth is not driven by the economy, but rather that it is technological improvement along with other factors outside the economy that fuel growth. Therefore, growth is not solely dependent on economic circumstances, but really more about what we are doing inside of our companies. So the idea here of technological improvement is central to what we're going to discuss today. So what really drives our productivity? And again, thinking broadly, beyond the plant floor. In a word, information. Without it, our machines can't move, customer orders can't be produced, invoices don't get issued. We need information end to end in our business. So several years ago, I made an interesting discovery about revenue productivity. And it was this. On average, wood products manufacturers generate only about half as much revenue per dollar of payroll invested compared to the average for all other manufacturing industries. Think about that. Half the revenue. Unfortunately, most industry business owners aren't aware of this disappointing truth. This data comes from the U.S. Census Bureau, the annual survey of manufacturers. And I looked at both the wood products manufacturing sector as well as all manufacturing industries. And the sad truth is that we perform well below. So what we want to talk about today is how this information is relevant to your business and your thinking about where do you invest in technology. If we take a look at industry data, that'll help us understand what the facts are. So I looked at the last 6 years and took an average of the revenue productivity. And by revenue productivity, there's two measurements I'm using. One is just how many employees divided into the gross sales of the company. The other is for every dollar of payroll invested, how much did we generate in revenue? So when we look at revenue per employee, when I looked at all manufacturing businesses, they're generating about $509,000 a year per employee in revenue. But the wood products sector, again, this is over an 8-year period, a 6-year period, we generated less than half of the revenue per employee. That's pretty astounding. When I looked at the revenue per dollar of payroll, so for each dollar of payroll invested, all other manufacturers are generating $9.05 in revenue. The wood industry, $5. So these are pretty grim kind of numbers, and particularly as we look at the investments in our companies, we have to find a way to become more competitive, and I believe that you'll have some insights on how I think we can do this. So wood products manufacturers substantially underperform compared to all other manufacturers with respect to revenue productivity. So then the next thing I looked at, again, is 6-year average, just wanting to make sure I understood the average payroll per employee. All manufacturing, about $56,000 a year. Wood products, $42,900. So we're averaging about $14,000 a year lower salaries to our employees. But as a percent of revenue, all manufacturers pay about 11% of their gross revenues are paid to payroll. But wood products manufacturers, 20.1%, almost double. So despite having lower per employee payroll expense, wood products manufacturers invest nearly double as a percent of their revenues into payrolls. And why is that? Well, I think it has a lot to do with what we are investing in technology. And I believe that one factor is that we are absolutely underinvesting in technologies, hard and soft. So here's another fact. When I looked, again, this data comes from the annual survey of manufacturers. So wood products manufacturers on average invest only 50% of what all other manufacturers are investing in information technology. So that includes hardware, software, and implementation, not in this case machinery. So this is on a per capita basis. I think this is one of the problems. If I look specifically at information technology, that is the whole investment on a per capita basis, all manufacturers are investing about $1,290 a year per employee, whereas the wood industry is only investing, the wood products manufacturing industry is only investing about $568. So, although there's no empirical proof that there is a correlation here, there is evidence to suggest that our investment in information technology overall does have an impact. It is also interesting to note that when I looked at the investment in capital equipment leases, the wood industry spends 9% more. So we have this predisposition to spend money on iron, but not on technology, specifically software. When I looked at it, all manufacturers spend about $389 per employee, where the wood industry is only spending about $185. So again, compared to all other manufacturers, both when we look at software and then the overall information technology investment, we're spending half of per capita of what all other manufacturers. And quite honestly, this was the only difference after looking at this for close to 10 years. This is the only explanation that I can find buried in the data. What I want to do next is review kind of a project that I had with a company recently. The next couple of slides are a high-level overview of an actual project for a large casework producer. Regrettably, the client had invested in beautiful equipment, great software, but it was really unsuitable for the business and for the manufacturing model requirements. So this project was done in multiple phases, and it blended both equipment and information systems. So the results that we're going to look at, the baseline and then the results of the project in two phases, were this combination of both. But the one thing I think that is worth reiterating is that without the information to drive the machines and to drive the plant floor, none of the improvements to the extent that we realized them would have been possible. That is, you know, we had to get the information systems in place. Otherwise, we would not have fully utilized the capacity or capability of the equipment. The project, a side note, the project began with analysis of the business, the market served, product specs, the price points, the market price point that was targeted, the volume, the lead times. It also assessed our existing hardware and software and equipment. And here's what we found. This model is based on actual data. And I'm not going to dig into these numbers too much, but what I'd like you to pay attention to is we started with 29 employees. Those employees were only producing 112.5 cabinets a day, a shift. So the cabinets per man hour were only 0.48 cabinets per man hour. And that gave us, based on the actual, our actual labor overhead and depreciation costs, that gave us a unit cost of $76.81. And on an annualized basis, the revenue per employee was only $99,000, or $1.97 for every dollar of payroll that was invested. Pretty grim start, but this was our baseline. And we used this model then to kind of model what we were doing and where we wanted to get to. So what you'll see in this slide is that we invested in new equipment, new information systems, which included 2020 manufacturing. We integrated 2020 Insight to our ERP system, which played a huge part in making sure that the information we needed was where it needed to be when we needed it, and that it was accurate. But look at the difference. We went from 29 employees to 25. We moved our cabinet output from 112 to 300 cabinets a shift. But look what it did to the unit cost. Now, if our sell price was $98 and our original unit cost was $76, we were losing money on our cabinets. If you look at the number now, $33.85, that moved, based on the volume, that moved our revenue per employee up to $307, $307,000 or $531. Phase 2, which is the next expansion, we will reduce the headcount even further to 18. increase the output to 340, and look at the impact. And think of what it would mean to your business if instead of producing $5 of revenue per dollar of payroll, you were producing $8 of revenue. So it's this whole model. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is this unit cost that was one of our drivers when we sat down with both the equipment company and with the software company. We were looking at how many cabinets do we want to produce per shift, what the head count needed to be, and what our unit cost had to be. And just as an aside, when I first started with this client, it was pretty funny. The client said to me, you know, if you're one of these consultants that's going to tell me I need new software, new hardware, new equipment, he says, you might as well just turn around, go back to the airport and get on a plane and go home. At the end of the day, that's what we did. We replaced basically everything except the ERP system. So the one point we want to make, and I'm going to discuss this next, is okay. If we want to do these things, how do we do them and do them well? The one thing that we did do before we invested the first nickel, we analyzed the current situation, which was the previous slide, and we made sure we knew what outcomes we wanted. And so these models helped us not only understand what the targets were, but they helped us create a roadmap to ensure that when we were meeting with hardware and software, you know, the technology companies, that we were all aligned as to what it was we were trying to do. And the results are there. These results in column 1 in phase 1 have been achieved. We're working. The company is now working on this phase of this. So when we think about informing our decisions, I think a lot, and again, when we think about productivity, everybody is more focused on the factory floor and the iron. But it's really important for us to understand all of the elements of our process, and our process extends well beyond before and after the factory floor. Granted, the factory floor is where the money is made, but how the factory is enabled to make achieves exceptional levels of productivity and profitability is dependent on how well we understand and design our business process. And there's an old adage: process first, software second. Process first, machinery second. So getting our business process understood from the point of, you know, for as close to the customer as we can, begin to design our business process and understand what our technology needs are before we start specifying equipment and software and other things. So the project specifications follow the process design, and that we did on this last project, heavily engaged a cross-functional team, and worked. Everybody on this team, from the software and machinery suppliers, were engaged in these discussions about the total project cost, the head counts, the impact on the output, the impact on the margin, and the impact on product cost. Our pricing was set based on where we needed to be, and that, in terms of market pricing, and that was driven backwards to produce a product at the cost that we could afford. So the behavior that I pretty well see as kind of our standard operating procedure is, when we are looking at investing in software and machinery, we do it at a project level. And what frequently happens is that we've got, rather than really approaching this in an integrated way and at a business level. We are doing this at a department level. And it is a predictable behavior of our industry to work in departmental silos. Decisions are made independently on machinery without due consideration of all of the IT implications. And that's the IT, the information implications across the business, not just on the plant floor. And oftentimes the decisions are made by different departments about which software we're going to select and which machinery we're going to select, and how those impact headcount, cost, and output. The better way to do this is to understand that information underlies everything in our business, and it is truly the strategic platform from which we must operate today. And I think that's part of the challenge for the industry. Our planning process needs to be business centric, not project centric, and it needs to fully integrate all of these factors: product, machinery, headcount, cost, output, software. It needs to account for all of those as we develop these strategies. And if you do that, if you can do that consistently, the evidence suggests that that's what's happening in other industries, and that's what's kind of missing in our approach, and why we are. It's one of the reasons that we're not generating the same amount of revenue that other companies and other industries do. So, in summing up, I believe that information is the lifeblood of our business. And I think especially today, information management is really and truly a strategic differentiator. And I think our industry undervalues that. And I think we've underinvested in information technology. And I think we need to go back and assess the real value inside of our companies. And this is not about throwing money at it. It is about identifying what the needs are and investing wisely and having the right partners to help you make that decision. Technology is not a project. It's an essential business driver. And I think that's really being missed. All business processes should be integrated by information. Too many companies, there's too many Excel spreadsheets, there's too much manual work, there's too much redundant work. We want to automate and integrate to improve process efficiencies. And I think there is a demonstrable link between growth and technology. If we automate our engineering processes in the front office, if we automate the preparation of all of our production information, we eliminate mistakes, we eliminate errors and omissions. We're able to plan better. We're able to more effectively utilize the capacity in the plant that we have. And I think the one thing that I see more in companies is this invisible and insidious waste of us not being aware of where the opportunities are to put more work through the plant with the same amount of people. And that includes the front office. So there is this, in my view, there is an undeniable link between growth and technology. We want to invest in technology, but we want to do it wisely. A couple of recommendations. Make information management a key element of your business strategy. Develop your business process, analyze it, and define it first. And not just in the context of what you're currently doing, but once you do a baseline, think about what would be better. And by doing a baseline and capturing some of the costs that you capture, like I did in the baseline for this case study, if you really analyze your business, you will see where the waste is, where the opportunities are to improve. And again, this is about putting more work through your company with the same headcount and doing it faster to accelerate capital. You're doing it with fewer mistakes. The business process and analysis has to come first. Then the specification and the search for your vendors comes second. Supplier selection is based on the specification, and that specification typically is going to be something that is done iteratively between you, your information technology vendor, and probably your equipment vendor. And validating the information improvements against revenue productivity. Make sure that you explain to your suppliers what you're after and be able to demonstrate that you want to increase the productivity of how you generate revenue. I mean, at the end of the day, this is just a slightly different variation on plant productivity. It's just that you're doing this at a much higher level, and you're doing it across the enterprise, not just one piece of it, across the business, not just the plant floor. So with that, I thank you and turn it back to Jörg.
Thank you so much, Don.
You are very welcome. Thank you for the invite, and
yeah,
hopefully there was something here that was of value to the attendees.
I believe so. Absolutely. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.